You're not just paying for water anymore, you're paying for everything around it. A few years ago, grabbing a case of bottled water felt like a simple, low-cost habit. It was convenient, easy to store, and widely available. For many families, it became a default choice. But recently, something has changed. Prices have gone up. Sometimes gradually, sometimes all at once. And what used to feel inexpensive now feels like a recurring expense that adds up faster than expected. So what's actually driving the cost of bottled water higher? To understand that, you have to look beyond the water itself. Because the water inside the bottle is only a small part of what you're paying for. The first factor is packaging. Every bottle requires plastic, and plastic production depends heavily on raw materials like petroleum. When the cost of these materials increases, the price of producing bottles goes up as well. And it's not just the material, it's also the manufacturing process. Creating millions of identical containers requires energy, machinery, and labor. Each step adds cost. Then there's transportation. Bottled water is heavy. Moving it from production facilities to warehouses, then to stores, requires fuel and logistics. When fuel prices rise, transportation becomes more expensive. And because water has a low profit margin per unit, even small increases in transportation costs can significantly affect the final price. Storage is another piece of the puzzle. Bottled water needs to be stored in large quantities before it's sold. That means warehouses, climate control, and inventory management. These are ongoing operational costs that don't exist in the same way for tap water. Retail also plays a role. By the time bottled water reaches a store shelf, it has passed through multiple layers: manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. Each step involves a markup. So even if the original cost is low, the final price reflects the entire chain. But there's another factor that's less obvious: demand. More people are buying bottled water than before. Some prefer it for convenience. Others use it because they don't fully trust their tap water. In some cases, people rely on it due to local water quality concerns. As demand increases, prices tend to follow. This is especially noticeable during certain situations like supply disruptions or environmental events, when bottled water becomes even more essential. And when something becomes essential, pricing becomes more sensitive. Now, when you combine all these factors: materials, production, transportation, storage, retail, and demand, you start to see the full picture. The cost of bottled water isn't just about water. It's about an entire system built around delivering that water in a specific form. And that system is becoming more expensive to maintain. At the same time, there's another issue people are beginning to notice. Even as prices rise, the perceived value doesn't always increase. In some cases, bottled water comes from the same municipal sources as tap water. It may go through additional filtration, but the origin can be similar. That raises a simple question: what are you really paying for? For many people, the answer becomes less clear over time. They're paying for convenience, consistency, and portability. But they're also paying for packaging, logistics, and distribution. And when those costs increase, the total cost of bottled water increases with them. This leads to a shift in thinking. Instead of seeing bottled water as a basic necessity, people start seeing it as a recurring expense that needs to be evaluated. Especially for families who use it daily. If you're buying bottled water regularly, the cost isn't just occasional, it's ongoing. Over months and years, it becomes a significant part of the household budget. And that's where alternatives start to gain attention. Some people go back to tap water, especially if they feel confident in their local supply. Others invest in filtration systems to improve water quality at home. These systems can reduce certain contaminants and improve taste, but they come with their own considerations: initial cost, maintenance, and filter replacements. So while they can reduce reliance on bottled water, they're not always a simple solution. This brings us to a broader perspective. The rising cost of bottled water isn't just a pricing issue. It's a reflection of how dependent many people have become on external systems for something as basic as water. And when those systems become more expensive, the impact is immediate. That's why some people are starting to explore ways to reduce that dependency. Not necessarily by replacing bottled water entirely, but by finding ways to create a more stable and predictable water source at home. Something that doesn't rely on constant purchasing. Something that doesn't fluctuate in price based on supply chains. And something that can be managed directly. This doesn't have to be complicated. In many cases, people are looking for simple, practical setups that allow them to improve or control their water without large investments. Basic systems that use accessible materials. Approaches that are easy to understand and maintain. Because the goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. The key insight here is that bottled water feels simple on the surface, but behind that simplicity is a complex and costly system. And as that system becomes more expensive, the cost is passed directly to the consumer. So the real question isn't just, why is bottled water expensive? It's, how much do you want to depend on a system that keeps getting more expensive? For some people, the answer is to continue using it for convenience. For others, it's to reduce usage and explore alternatives. But either way, understanding the structure behind the cost makes it easier to make an informed decision. Because once you see what you're paying for, you can decide whether it still makes sense for your situation. And in many cases, even small adjustments can reduce long-term costs. If this made you rethink how much you rely on bottled water, there's a resource in the description that explains a simple way some people are creating a more consistent water setup at home using basic, low-cost methods. It's designed to show the process step by step, so you can evaluate whether it fits your needs. And if you want more content like this clear, practical breakdowns of everyday systems, consider subscribing. Because when you understand how things work, it becomes easier to make better choices.